Get started. My name is Amy Shanerock, and I'm calling in from Central Minnesota. I'm with the GrowthZone marketing team. Welcome, everyone. You're here for the members How to Get Them, How to Keep Them webinar. All who are attending live will receive a CAE credit certificate by email after the session. Today, we're excited to learn tips for finding and keeping members with Elizabeth Engel, Chief Strategist at Spark Consulting. For 25 years, Elizabeth has helped associations grow in membership, marketing, communications, public presence, and especially revenue, which is what Spark is all about. Smart Spark. She speaks and writes frequently on a variety of topics in association management. When she's not helping associations grow, Elizabeth loves to dance, listen to live music, cook, and garden. Today's webinar is being recorded, and we will send it by email within 24 hours to all who have registered. If you're not a current user of GrowthZone and you're interested in a one-to-one demo of the software, visit our website, growthzone.com, and click that Get a One-to-One Demo or Watch a Product Tour. And use the chat, as you've seen now that I've enabled it. You can use the chat to ask any questions. We'll hold those till the end so we can focus on Elizabeth to share her full presentation with us. I'll quit talking and mute myself and my camera, but thank you for your interest in this webinar, and welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much, Amy. I just want to make sure everybody sees the GrowthZone slide that you will receive a recording of today's webinar and also your CAE credit certificate once we are finished. So as Amy mentioned, you are definitely welcome to share your thoughts with each other and to do some networking and chatting and building community in the chat. But I did want to start by asking everyone, what did you walk in here today, or walk in virtually anyway, wanting to learn? Was there some question that you had on your mind, something in particular you wanted to get out of this webinar? I like to ask people that up front. On the one hand, we probably will answer some of your questions during the course of the webinar, at least I hope so. And those that don't get answered as we go through the presentation today together, Amy will make sure you are first in line when we get to the Q&A portion. So again, if you have walked in here with something on your mind in particular, go ahead and share it in the chat. Amy's going to keep an eye on that, and we'll make sure that you get to go first when we hit Q&A. What are we going to talk about today? Today, we're going to talk about everything you need to know to get and keep members. And so our agenda is going to include some things like talking about the differences between recruitment, retention, and renewal, talking about what is an MVP, a member value proposition, features versus benefits and why that's important, the marketing funnel, ladders of engagement, the elements of a recruitment campaign, welcome cycle, and then we're going to get back to the ladder of engagement again as we talk about retention. To start us off, what is the difference between recruitment, retention, and renewal? They are all related concepts, but they are not the same thing. Recruitment is the point where you get people in the door in the first place. And it's about sales, at least partially about sales. But really what recruitment is someone choosing to start a relationship with your association and your association choosing to start a relationship with them. Retention is different. Retention is about keeping those members once you get them to join in the first place. Once you realize that this is the right relationship for both of you and you start that in the first place. This is about nurturing that relationship over the long term once you've both chosen to start it. And it is crucial to long-term sustainable growth for your organization. Recruitment without retention is like pouring water into a bucket that has a hole in it, right? You keep pouring new members in, but they keep flowing out the bottom, right? You need to both recruit and retain in order to be successful. Finally, what is renewal in all this? How does it relate to this whole membership lifecycle process thingy? Renewal is a process. So it's the mechanics of retention. It's about things like how many notices you send, to whom, on what platforms, at what times, with what messages, all that kind of thing. Retention is your goal. Hanging on to those members is your goal. Nurturing those relationships for the long term is your goal. Renewal is the tactic or the process you use to achieve that goal. People have to choose to join your association in the first place. And that might seem like kind of an obvious thing to say, but they do have other options. What are those options? There are things like they could choose to join a competitor association or other type of nonprofit. They could choose to join or become a member of or form a relationship with a competitor for-profit. There are starting to be some for-profit membership associations that are moving into our space and are competing with us for possible members, at least in some professions. They could choose to be a customer rather than becoming a member. So they could choose to buy things a la carte at a non-member price rather than sort of choosing that committed membership relationship. They could use platforms like LinkedIn or Meetup or other types of things like that to self-organize. Or they could choose something that's called the null option, which is when they choose to do nothing. And that is a particular risk for groups that heavily promote things like their advocacy work, because advocacy work has a big free rider problem. People will generally realize if the main benefit they're getting from your organization is advocacy, that you're probably going to do that with or without them and their membership dues. And so they can choose that null option and choose not to join and not to get the benefits of belonging to your community at all. So then the question becomes, if those are all the other options that you've got, why would you choose us? Why choose our association? And the answer to that is your member value proposition. So a member value proposition, an MVP, is the programs, products, and services that you provide to help members achieve their most important goals and solve their most pressing problems, and that align with your mission. So there's lots of things that you could do to help members achieve their goals and solve their problems. But your member value proposition, it's critical that it also align with the mission of your organization. When we're thinking about member value proposition, a lot of times we kind of ask ourselves, how can we convince the members to think that whatever it is that we're doing is valuable? And the problem with this kind of a perspective on your member value proposition is that it's focused on the association and your internal goals. MVP is a lot like brand, right? You don't define it, your members do. And what the association wants to accomplish is usually not particularly motivating or inspiring to members and prospects. So as we're thinking about member value proposition, a better question or questions to ask ourselves would be things like, what are our members' most important goals? What are their biggest challenges, most pressing problems? And what are the type of solutions that we can provide to help them achieve those things? This is a member value proposition as defined by the audience, by your members, by your prospects. And while the association's goals are not necessarily particularly motivating, providing solutions to people is particularly motivating. So that gets us to talking about things like benefits versus features. And this is a famous saying that illustrates the concept of benefits versus features by Theodore Levitt, who was a professor at the Harvard Business School. And people don't want to buy a quarter-inch drill, they want to buy a quarter-inch hole, right? They want to be able to make a quarter-inch hole in something. That's the benefit. The feature is the quarter-inch drill. So what does that look like in an association context? Well, for instance, many of you who are GrowthZone or might potentially become GrowthZone associations might have a job board. A job board is a feature. Connecting a member to an employer who is looking for their specific skills and qualifications, as opposed to like throwing them into the deep end of like a monster.com or even something like Indeed, where that employer is specifically looking for somebody just like them, so you can help them get their first job, get a better job, advance, get promoted, etc. That's a benefit. When you think about and talk about your member value proposition, you want to be focusing on benefits, which is looking at the world from your members' perspective, rather than thinking about talking about features, which is looking at it from your own perspective, from your internal association perspective. Obviously, then you also have to deliver on whatever it is that you promised that you were going to give them. But it's about developing a member-centric perspective inside your association, and then talking about what your association does and offers from that perspective in that way. So once you have a great member value proposition that you've got a good package of programs, products, and services that helps your members achieve those important goals, solve those big challenges, and you're talking about it and expressing it and sharing it in a member-centric way, how do you get people to join? You've got the thing that you want them to become a part of. How do you get them to join? Some of you might be already familiar with the concept of a marketing funnel. And if you'll notice, the whole thing starts up there at the top with this concept of awareness. Lead generation. That's that awareness thing up at the top there. And awareness is the widest part, the biggest piece of the funnel on purpose, because not everyone that you meet or encounter or make that first connection with is going to be a good fit for your association. You want to be focused on recruiting people, starting those relationships for whom your association will be a good fit. Lead generation is about making first contact. But once you've made first contact, how do you figure out if this is in fact the right relationship? If that person is a good fit for you, if you're a good fit for them, if this is going to be a productive relationship over time. That's where the ladder of engagement comes in. The ladder of engagement is about building relationships. You can't ask somebody to marry you before you've even been on a date, right? And so what happens with a ladder of engagement is, over time, over multiple interactions, they're deepening their commitment. Your possible members, prospective members, are deepening their commitment to the association, and they're deepening their investment with you at the same time that you are deepening your commitment to them and your investment with them. So both of you are kind of gaining more knowledge about each other along the way, and you're gradually making more of a commitment. So and that can look like a lot of different kinds of things. It can be a commitment of money, but it can also be a commitment of time, energy, attention, all those sorts of things that we think about when we think about engagement. When you are starting to build that relationship, you've got people in that awareness part of the funnel, and you're trying to deepen that relationship and determine if you're right for each other. You want to start with something that is low commitment. So probably something that's free, something that's not going to take not only a lot of money, but also a lot of time, energy, attention, et cetera. So a really excellent first entry point for that marketing funnel, that awareness level for a lot of associations is sign up for our newsletter, right? Low commitment. You give me your name and email address. That's the commitment that you're making. You have given me your information. And in exchange, I am going to give you something that is hopefully fairly valuable to you, industry specific, profession specific information that you're going to get for free. The only commitment you have to make to us in order to use that is obviously your time to take a look at it. And then if your lead does that, if your prospective member does that, then you want to offer her something else that requires maybe a little bit more commitment. We've got this member webinar that's coming up. We'd like to offer you a code to get it either at a discount or even for free to come check us out, see a little bit more what membership would be like. You make her that offer. She opts to take that. It's a little bit more of a commitment. Maybe there's some cost involved. It's obviously more of a time commitment. And as you continue to do that for a few cycles, after she's continued to say, yes, I want to make this deeper level of commitment, it costs me a little bit more in time or energy or money. That's when you get to the point of, okay, now it's time to ask her to, marry the association, to join the association. The idea behind this is that at each stage of this deepening relationship, of going up that ladder of engagement, of getting from that, low to medium to high level of commitment, you're going to be making fewer pitches to people, but you'll have a much greater chance of being successful. You're narrowing your pool of possible candidates, but you're narrowing them to people who actually want to be members, and people who will be able to get something valuable out of their relationship with the association, and who will also be able to contribute something valuable to the relationship with the association. It's not just a one-way, you're sitting there passively and receiving benefit from us, right? You want somebody who's actually going to be able to contribute to the good of the community your association represents. By paying attention to people's behaviors when you're making all of those offers and seeing which they take and which they don't take, and why they're doing that, you can figure out what kinds of things most people do on their way to getting to the ends that they and you want to reach. So the end that you want to reach is for them to join and become a loyal member. The end that they want to reach is to be able to build their professional network, to advance in their careers, to gain knowledge, etc. Right? You both have goals for this relationship. And if you're paying attention to people's behaviors, learning more about them as you go, you can make sure that you are reaching the right people with the right pitches at the right time. So this is all kind of theory about recruitment and retention and all that sort of thing. The question then becomes how do we apply it, right? So in other words, how do you actually recruit members? What are the steps that are involved in constructing a recruitment campaign? The steps that are involved in constructing a recruitment campaign are about answering a series of questions, and these are them. Most membership organizations will conduct at least one, if not more than one, formal annual recruitment campaign. And a pro tip here is you answer these same sorts of questions for other types of marketing campaigns as well, whether that would be your renewal campaigns, whether that would be campaigns to market your annual conference or any kind of product that you might develop or a service that you might develop, professional development, your certifications, et cetera, right? These are the questions that you need to answer in order to create a campaign, a marketing campaign. So let's go through them. First question you need to answer is, what are our campaign goals? And it is very important when you are talking about this and thinking about this that you be specific. So we want to increase our membership is not a very good goal. We want to recruit 400 new members by the end of the calendar year is a good goal. You want to think about those, smart goals that we've all heard about this before. You want them to be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound, right? 400 new members by the end of the calendar year is all of those things. Now, when you're thinking about your goals for your campaign, you might have some secondary goals as well. That could be things like identifying pre-joining behaviors so that you can have a better sense of who are good candidates for recruitment in the future. You could want to build that awareness, that top of the funnel. You might want to increase your active leads by a certain number, getting more folks into the top of that funnel. You might want to learn what offers are the most persuasive. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. Or what platforms for communicating with people are most effective, right? Those are all kind of secondary goals. But when you're thinking about recruitment, get concrete. Who do we want to recruit? How many of them? In what time frame? Because that's going to keep you focused. That's going to be a SMART goal. The second question you want to answer is, who are we actually trying to recruit, right? Who are our audiences and what do we know about them? Relevant data about your audiences could include things like physically where they're located. It could include their current position or career stage. It might include things like their educational background, career goals, etc. And the reason it's important to try to learn as much as you can about your audiences for a recruitment campaign is because that's going to help you figure out who your really hot prospects are. And the pieces of data that help you figure that out are things like their buying and involvement patterns, all that ladder of engagement stuff that we just talked about a minute ago, because what you're looking for is people who are behaving like your members do. And if you start to pay attention, you can identify patterns of behavior that indicate that particular people are thinking about membership. They are ready to buy. They are ready to start the relationship. And so they'll be receptive to, or they're more likely to be receptive to, a membership pitch. We all know what this looks like in our own consumer experiences from our experiences with things like Amazon recommendations. That first page that you see when you log into the Amazon site where they say, hey, based on your previous purchases and other people who are like you, here's some things we think you might like. Associations can do that too, right? We can look at patterns of behavior, patterns of purchases and say, other people who've done things similar to what you've just done have been ready to join. Perhaps you might be ready to join as well. The next question you want to ask yourself is, what is our MVP, our member value proposition? And of course, you want to remember to express this as benefits from their perspective and not features from your perspective. Now, the trick here, when you're kind of thinking about those audiences and your MVP, is that most associations have a pretty lengthy list of member benefits. The thing is, most members join for 2 or 3 things on that list, and those 2 or 3 things are probably going to vary from member to member. So it becomes incumbent on us, as membership professionals, to tailor our pitches, which brings us to your messaging, right? What messages are going to be persuasive? And it varies. The hard part about this is it varies. So you're looking to try to target your message to particular groups. That's when you hear people talk about segmentation, that's what they mean. And that's why it's important to learn as much as you possibly can about your prospects before you start trying to pitch the membership. What would that look like? Okay, so let's say let's say our purple group there, you're trying to target your membership pitch to a young professional. Well, a young professional is somebody who's probably relatively recently finished whatever their formal schooling was for your profession or industry. And they at this point need things like, how do I turn what I learned in school into what I'm actually going to do on my job on a day-to-day basis? How do I start to meet people? How do I start to build my professional network? Does this profession offer some sort of a certification that I might want to get? Let's say our yellow group there is maybe more mid-career professionals, and you might have, say, like a mid-career professional who is established, but who's moved to a new location. Well, she's going to need things more like, well, now I need to meet other people in the profession in my new location. I need to build new vendor relationships in my new location. Our blue group there might be somebody like an experienced professional who has yet to join. Well, then you might want to start thinking about, okay, what is that person doing? That might be somebody who has been in-house, at the profession or industry that you serve for a while, and maybe they're now looking to launch a consulting business. Well, all of a sudden, they have a different set of needs. They need a different kind of connections. They might need to be able to have opportunities to be a thought leader, or to build different types of relationships than they've built as a professional to date. A certification there might also be very valuable. They might need to learn things about how to run a small business. That orange group, maybe that's somebody who's getting close to retirement. They might want the opportunity to give back via mentoring, or other types of thought leadership positions. They might be somebody who would be, an excellent candidate for a more responsible volunteer position. All of those kinds of people need very different kinds of pitches because they're not looking for the same thing from you. Once you've thought through that, you need to think about what tactics are you going to use? And what I mean by tactics is, how are you actually going to communicate with people about, hey, join our association? So some of you might be familiar with Marketing General. They every year release a new edition of their membership marketing benchmarking report. The 2022 edition just came out about a month ago, or maybe a little bit more. And per the 2022 edition of the MGI Membership Marketing Benchmarking Report, the 3 most effective tactics that were reported by associations who responded to their survey for recruiting new members were email. By that, they don't mean just e-newsletters, bulk, dear colleague kinds of pitches. They mean personalized pitches, segmented pitches, association meetings and events, and member referrals, word of mouth. Some of the additional tactics that were also reported as being effective, although not in the top 3, by the responding associations were things like personal sales calls, chapter involvement, organic social media. What that means is not kind of broadcast marketing, paid messages, ads type stuff on social media from your association. Organic social media it's basically another form of word of mouth. It's people talking about you and saying good things about you on social media, or you interacting with prospects in an authentic way. Content marketing was also on that list. Participating in other organizations, conferences and events, direct mail, and paid digital advertising. And the point of this long list of possible tactics that you could use that associations have found to be effective is that when you're marketing something to someone, you're usually going to have to make multiple touches before they actually choose to purchase your membership or whatever it is that you're trying to market to them. And it's very rare for somebody to see one thing one time from one organization and immediately say, yes, I'm going to buy. Different people also are going to be responsive or receptive to different kinds of outreach at different times. Now, you can usually track whatever was the final touch point, the one that actually precipitated the person to act and choose to join. But you may not necessarily easily be able to track everything that led up to that. Another thing to be aware of is, again, you can usually track whatever communication it was that precipitated taking action. But one thing you have to remember is it might have been an earlier message that was actually persuasive. It's just the one that precipitated the action was the one that showed up at a time that they could actually take the call to action. They actually had the time and capacity to do something about the thing that you offered them right then. And this is part of the reason why marketing is more art than science, right? Because you can usually come up with correlation. It is very hard to come up with specifics about cause and effect. The next question you want to ask yourself is, what are the resources that we have to devote to this campaign? And the first thing that you'll think about when you think about resources is money. And obviously, you're going to have to invest some in your membership marketing in order to be successful. But you do have other resources that you can invest in campaigns. What would those look like? There are things like staff time and energy, volunteer time and energy, whether through things like a membership committee, through things like a member get a member or a member get a lead campaign, right? You've got folks out there who are not paid staff who might be willing to help. Or also things like just putting in the time and energy to do that good segmentation so that you can target those pitches better. Now, obviously, it's easier to do fancy segmentation if you have sophisticated marketing automation software. But even if you don't have that, you can still do segmentation and targeting with a little bit of skill with Excel. The next thing you need to ask yourself is, what's your schedule? And so this is where you get into the specifics of who is responsible to do what when. This is when you actually create your detailed plan for, we're going to send this particular communication on this platform with this message and this offer to this person at this time, right? And this step is critical. This is what allows your great plans and ideas and your goals to become real. It also creates accountability. And so when you're thinking about putting together your schedule for your campaign, you want to make sure that you build in some points along the way to stop and assess whether what you're doing is having the effect that you intended, whether it's working the way you expected it to, and make changes accordingly. So, for instance, I did a project with an organization of scientists a couple of years ago, and they had actually stopped sending, and it was a renewal campaign. They had actually stopped sending any print notices, and we decided that we were going to try an experiment where we were going to send a postcard with a shortened URL to a very simplified renewal process. Just something colorful. It was a picture of a member, a really brightly colored picture of a member with a quote about what that member valued about our membership, shortened URL, simplified renewal process, right? We wanted to just see if this would make an impact. And we had only planned to send that postcard once. So we did that, and we sent the postcard, and that had that nice trackable URL on it. So perhaps to what I had mentioned earlier, our messaging earlier in the series was the thing that actually persuaded members that they wanted to renew. But when they got that postcard, it triggered them to take action. So what we learned is that turned out to be a good tactic for us to use. And because we had set aside time during the campaign to sit down and say, how are things going? What of the pitches that we're sending, what of the communications platforms we're using are effective, we were able to see, oh, that postcard worked really well. So we decided that we were actually going to send it a second time later in the campaign. And then that association later decided to build that postcard in as a regular part of their ongoing renewal work. Because again, we had taken the time to sit down and say, okay, from week to week, from touch point to touch point, what's happening? How are things going? Are people responding? Then obviously, once you've done all this, you've got your goals and your audiences and your offers and your messages and your tactics, and you've got your resources set up and you've got your campaign plan all in order and you're running along and doing everything that you plan to do, you have to actually sit down and say, okay, well, wait, how are we going to know whether or not we were successful in this campaign? Now, if you remember back that first thing that we talked about, setting your goals, you want to do that right at the beginning, but at the end, you have to determine whether or not you met them. You not only want to talk about, did we get to those 400 new members recruited in this calendar year, but you want to talk about why did we not meet those goals, and what did we learn as a result? Now, again, this is partially did we meet that, we got one of those 400 members, and with that we had this, certain revenue goal in mind. Did we get there, right? But you also want to think about how did we do against the budget that we had allocated for this, of money, but also of staff time and energy, volunteer time and energy, all that kind of thing. And you want to evaluate the campaign, how things didn't work, so that you can capture what you learned and do better the next time. Do more of the stuff that worked and eliminate or do less of the stuff that wasn't quite as effective as you'd hoped it would be. It's important to do this while it's still fresh in your mind at the end of the campaign, so that you can use that to improve your next campaign. And when you're doing that campaign debrief, you want to make sure that you involve everyone who was involved in the campaign. Don't just sit down, the membership director, yourself, or the membership director and CEO or whatever. Like you want to bring in everyone who played a part in the campaign, because different people notice different things and make different connections along the way. Okay, so we've just talked about, how you go through constructing a campaign to recruit members, and what you need to do, all the components, the questions you need to answer, getting to the end, evaluating the campaign, soup to nuts. How do we do this? Okay, so once you've got members in the first place, how do you keep them? Once they've made the decision to join, how do you make sure that they stay with you for the long term? This is when you pivot to retention, that next step in the process. Retention is the key to growth. It's the key to long-term health of your association. It is much easier and cheaper to keep a member than it is to get a new one. And also your repeat customers, your long-term members, your loyal members have something that's called lifetime value. And that is everything that they contribute to the good of your association over the entire tenure of their membership relationship with you. And obviously that's the dues they pay you every year. And it's also tangible financial things like conference registrations or program product or service purchases, et cetera. It's the money that they put into the association, but it's also more intangible things like what they do to contribute to thought leadership in your organization, their volunteer efforts, what they do to build community, what they do to build the knowledge base of your profession or industry, right? It's the whole total of everything that they contribute to the good of your organization over all the time that they spend with you. There's no magic bullet that guarantees retention. There's no kind of secret to you're going to have, if you just do this one special trick, you'll achieve at least 85% retention, right? There isn't anything like that. But there are some good guidelines and practices around communication, engagement, and value that you can follow to help. The first step in thinking about retention is to try to understand those 2 to 3 things of your long list of benefits that any given person or company has chosen to join you, so you can be sure to provide that to them and meet their expectations. And that begins with the welcome cycle. So you've gone through your recruitment campaign and you've recruited a new member, and you need to orient them, right? You need to help them those new members, those 400 new members that you hopefully recruited before the end of the calendar year, to what it means to be a member of your association. But those members knew enough that they wanted to join, but they don't know how to be a member or how to get the most out of their membership. They knew that they had a goal they wanted to achieve or a problem they wanted to solve, and you successfully convinced them that you could help them with that. Now it's your job to show them how that's actually going to work. So back to, again, the 2022 Marketing General Membership Marketing Benchmarking Report. The following welcome tactics were used by at least 20% or more of respondents. These are the top welcome tactics used by associations who responded to the survey. They include a welcome email, which is used by pretty much everybody, an invitation to create a member profile on your website or to complete your member profile. I mean, obviously, you already have some information about the person. An emailed new member series, an invitation to join your private online community for those associations who have private communities, an invitation to follow the association's social media accounts. Those would be more public-facing types of communities that you might have on LinkedIn or Facebook or other platforms. An emailed welcome kit, some type of a member card, certificate, or plaque. A mailed welcome kit. Folks do still like to get things in the physical mail from time to time, and it can be nice to have something that encapsulates all your member benefits that you can easily stick on your bookshelf or on your desk. A welcome call, and an invitation to volunteer. When you're thinking about retention, it's really as simple as this statement: engaged members renew and disengaged members do not renew. The ladder of engagement is equally as relevant to retention as it is to recruitment. And, as we've talked about, people choose their own membership adventure. They're each going to have their own reasons that they came to you looking for help, looking for solutions. So you want to accommodate lots and lots of ways to engage, lots and lots of possible engagement ladders. So what are some of the opportunities for engagement that you could present your members with so that they become those engaged members who stick with you over the long term rather than becoming disengaged members who wander off? People can consume information that your association provides to them. They can participate in a private online community. They can participate by liking, sharing, recommending, etc., on your public social media communities. They can respond to surveys. They can attend events either in person or virtually. They can write for you, either something formal like a blog post or a magazine article or a newsletter article, or something that's a little bit more informal, like a comment on a blog post or an article, or responding to a question in an online community. They can speak for your association. They can volunteer, either in kind of a formal role, board member, committee chair, committee member, etc., or in kind of a more ad hoc or micro way, greeting people at an event, voting in an election, right? Those are volunteering as well. They could mentor younger professionals or mentor older professionals, right? Because there's opportunities for cross-generational mentoring around a variety of types of skills. And they could donate. That can be donations of money, that can be donations of time, that can be other types of donations to your organization. All of these types of things, all of these opportunities to engage are the types of things that'll turn someone from that sort of passive, mailbox member. That's a little bit of a dated term when associations primarily communicated through the U.S. mail. But it's that person who just kind of sits there and receives from the association into someone who's going to be an active promoter or champion or ambassador for your association. That kind of person who's going to do that word of mouth recommendation and say, hey, I just met you. You're a person who's also in the same profession or same industry with me, but you have got to check out my association. They're great, and here's why. What this all comes down to, what we've been talking about for the entire past almost 40 minutes, is value. And the reason that I keep hitting on that and keep talking about that, and the reason it's so important is that, that is the piece of all of this that is the thing that makes your members say, this is worth my investment. But as we've been talking about from the beginning of this presentation, you have to make sure that you're thinking about it and expressing it and sharing it and promoting it from their perspective. Value, engagement, they're all defined by the member, not the association. They're about the problems that they need to solve. They're about what they're trying to accomplish in their professional lives and how the association can help them, the solutions that you can provide for them. So when we're thinking about member engagement, we're thinking about trying to retain members. A typical question that we would ask, much like with recruitment, is how can we get our members to do whatever it is that we want them to do? And the problem with this way of thinking about engagement is it's internally focused on the association and our goals. How can we get them to join? How can we get them to do what we want them to do? This is not going to be something that's going to inspire people to want to be with you. Engagement, as I mentioned, is like brand. You don't define it, your members define it, and what you want is not particularly motivating to them. When you can shift your mindset to better member engagement questions like, what do our members value? What outcomes do they seek that we can reasonably help them with? You're shifting your perspective on how you're thinking about your relationship with your members. You're positioning your association by thinking about engagement in this way to be not just something that's kind of a nice to have if I happen to have the free time, the free money to invest in it. You're positioning your association to be a critical partner in your members' personal and professional success, helping them achieve their most important, most significant goals and solve their most pressing problems. And that's what I want for you and your association. I want you to be able to be that critical partner in your members' success. This is how you get there. And with that, Amy, we can turn over to questions if we have some from the chat.
All right. I've been trying to monitor. There's a little back channel conversation going on, which is awesome. A lot of people bouncing ideas off of each other, a lot of people offering support to each other with the same concerns. Repeat things that are coming up. Obviously, when you asked what they want to learn, new member recruitment, building membership, membership retention, keeping members, providing all of what you've been talking about. One thing that was said is they hold events, but the same members seem to come month after month. How do you get new members? How do you get, can you do some sort of incentive to get new members to come?
Yeah, it's that is a really good question, and it's funny. One of the things that happened with the pandemic, because of course when we're talking about events, there's kind of two pieces of this. One is in-person events, and one is virtual events. And then obviously many of us are looking at hybrid events these days too, which have components of both. So one of the things that was interesting is, when the pandemic hit, associations pivoted to virtual events. I mean, we had to. And one thing that many, not all, but many associations experienced with that is they had a completely different group of people, or at least a mostly different group of people showing up for virtual events. So then that got everybody kind of thinking about, okay, what's going on here, right? If we've got one audience that does in-person events and we've got this different audience that does virtual events, what's happening here? And then as we've gotten to the point that we can kind of begin, poking our heads out of our little groundhog holes, or prairie dog holes, and and thinking about returning to in-person events, how do we keep those new audiences? So how does that relate to the question of we're trying to attract new audiences to our events? What associations discovered when they dug into this a little bit more is there were barriers to in-person attendance that they weren't necessarily aware of. And some of this has to do with some generational stuff too, but the kinds of people who can attend a virtual event may not be the same kinds of people who can attend an in-person event. And so, associations started thinking about what are the kinds of barriers that tend to prevent people from being able to attend an in-person event. They might not be able to afford the travel. Now, afford means more than just, I couldn't pay for the plane ticket. It also means, can I afford the time taken away from my job responsibilities, right? That might be somebody who's a little bit less senior in their profession. They might not be able to get release time to go to an event, or it might also be, I can't afford the time away from my familial responsibilities. As you look at kind of particularly like sandwich generations, those tend to be mid-career professionals where you might now have the pull in your organization to be able to get away to go to something, but now all of a sudden you're taking care of an elderly parent and a child, and you can't take that time off, so what associations realized is, and this has been kind of the thing that's generated a lot of the resolution to continue on with hybrid events, even going forward, or even continue to maintain some entirely virtual events, is those other people who have those other life concerns. We still want to be able to keep those audiences and keep connection to them. Another thing to think about as you're thinking about events and kind of who's there and who's not is, okay, well, what are the topics that are the focus of our events? And so back to that whole thing of kind of paying attention to people's behavior and what they're doing. This gets into playing around with segmentation. Okay, so you know who's coming to your events, the topics that are being covered, and then you can look at, okay, so then who are the people who are not coming to our events, and what are the kinds of things that they are doing with our organization otherwise. So it might come down to paying attention to what links they're clicking on in your e-newsletters, or what kinds of resources they're accessing online in your member portal or in an online magazine, and look at, are those topics the same kinds of topics as we're covering in our events, or are they different topics? If they're different topics, should we try doing some events related to, some of those different kinds of topics that people are checking out? And so there, there's kind of that piece as well. Then there's the third piece, which is, have you asked them? We tend to survey people who attend our events pretty thoroughly. I mean, it's very common, whether it's an in-person event or a virtual event, it's very common for us to send out, a post-event evaluation form. What did you think of the location, the format, the speaker, and we get all that great data. But a lot of times we don't ever ask the people who don't attend, whether it's an in-person event or a virtual event, why didn't you come? Was it because of some of those factors for an in-person event that are maybe outside of our control? Was it because the topic wasn't appealing to you? Was it because the format wasn't appealing to you? Was it because you couldn't take the time away during a workday, and then all of our events are our virtual events even are during a workday? So you do want to try to dig into what's motivating them as well.
Thank you. Another question that came up is, what percentage is good member retention?
Oh, that is an excellent question. As you might expect, it does vary based on whether you're a trade association or an individual membership association. And I will, in fact, point you to the Marketing General Membership Marketing Benchmarking Report, because that is one of the questions that they ask every year. If I recall correctly, I believe that the figures for this year, individual membership, and realize that there's both median and mean. So what's the difference? One of them is the median is the actual, I'm sorry, the mean is the actual average. They add everybody's renewal percentages together and take the average. The median is the one that showed up the most frequently. So that kind of if you've got kind of people who are at the wide ends of the spectrum, somebody's retaining 100%, somebody's only retaining 5%, that takes them out of the equation, so it doesn't skew the data. If I recall correctly, individual membership was around 78%, and trade association membership was a bit higher than that. It's usually in the low to mid 80s. All of that, so some of you right now are going, yay, we're doing average or even better than average. And some of you are going, oh no, it's, disaster. Take all of those industry averages with a grain of salt. One of the most important things that you can pay attention to is changes in your own rates over time. There are just some professions or industries that are, for lack of a better word, are a little bit more volatile, I guess would be the right way to say it. People kind of come into them and out of them a little bit more frequently. than other types of professions. And so, in an association for a profession or an industry like that, you are going to see more swings in your membership counts. That's just kind of part of the landscape. And so, yes, benchmarking yourself against the industry as a whole, or against, whether you're a trade association or an individual membership, against your part of the industry is great, but you really want to be able to be paying attention to what's going on internally. And obviously you always want to be thinking about, are there ways that we can improve on our current retention rate? Are there ways that we can improve on our current recruitment rate? But watch for swings there. That's the thing that's going to tell you, if all of a sudden our retention rate, like if I tell you, this association X's retention rate is 82%, you might say, well, that's great, right? But what if their normal retention rate is 87%? And all of a sudden now it's 82%. Well, if you just go by the industry standards, you're going, well, it's an individual membership association. They're still doing better than the average. That's fantastic. But not necessarily. So that's likewise, if you're in one of those more volatile professions and your retention rate is 75%, you might look at that and say, we're in crisis, right? Not necessarily. What if your usual retention rate is 70%? So, it's a factor of both things.
This is somewhat related. How often should people evaluate their campaign data? Monthly, yearly?
Oh, all of the above. Yeah. So, you want to, that's a good question. So think back to, when we were talking about when you're creating your schedule, you want to be building in those evaluation points. You actually want to be evaluating your data in real time, because that's, again, going to tell you, hey, that postcard worked really well. We want to send that again. Or, hey, we tried making, an offer, like a really popular offer for associations that run everybody on a calendar year renewal. So you're all renewing at the same time. A really popular offer is something like, renew now and get, I'm sorry, or join now. And get like 15 months or 18 months or, whenever you're pitching the campaign for the price of 12, right? So let's say our schedule runs, January to December, and we're starting a campaign in the fall. And we say, oh, if you join now in September, your membership you're only paying the 12-month rate, but your membership will be valid through the end of next year. Well, like, you want to be able to evaluate, did that motivate people? So real time, yes, you need to pay attention, which probably means, weekly while the campaign is going on. But then, as I'd mentioned, once the campaign concludes, you do want to sit down and kind of have that bigger look debrief. Okay, what worked, what didn't work? Because, as I mentioned, particularly for something like a recruitment campaign, you're probably doing one a year, maybe more than one a year. And so you want to make sure that you've captured what you learned from doing that previous campaign, so that when you're building your next campaign, you can incorporate those things that you've learned. And then, kind of as you're thinking about so that would be when the campaign ends. So assuming you're doing one campaign a year, you're doing that when the campaign ends, and then you're using those to build the next campaign. But then you also want to step back even further beyond that, and over time look at, okay, so over the past several years, this is what we've been doing for recruitment, or this is what we've been doing for renewal. And are we seeing the results that we want to see? That's when you kind of do that look of, how are we benchmarking against ourselves? Is our renewal rate, is our retention rate staying the same? Is it increasing? Is it declining? Are people responding at different points during the cycle? Why do we think that's going on? How are we doing with recruitment? Now, admittedly, you might start bumping up if you're doing really well with recruitment and retention. Eventually, you're going to bump up against, like, what's the size of our universe? But, last year we recruited 50 members. This year we recruited 100. What's different? What went differently? So there isn't one answer to that. During the campaign, probably weekly. At the end of the campaign, use that to inspire your next campaign. And then again, every couple of years, sit down and take that longer term view.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Elizabeth, for your time today. It's been a ton of information. We had people saying, slow down, but then other people saying, no, keep going. This is great information. So
you know what? You can always go back and look at the recording again.
Exactly. Yep. I think people
And
recommended that. So perfect.
also, of course, this is how you find me afterwards. So, if you have a question that didn't get answered today, or that like is just occurring to you right now as we're starting to wrap up, please do feel free to get in touch with me, via email, connect with me on LinkedIn, shoot me a tweet, and ask. I'm certainly happy to help you out.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And again, remember, this was sponsored by GrowthZone. If you have any questions of how our software can help your association or your chamber, just reach out on our website, growthzone.com. You can watch an interactive tour or request a one-to-one demo. We have a wealth of resources to help you. So thank you all. Have a great afternoon or evening, wherever you're at. And I hope we can work with Elizabeth again in the future.
Thanks, everyone.
Sounds like you were very popular. All right. Take care, everyone.
Bye.